psychologist and nature writer's life takes a dark turn after discovering a simian man in the woods. In the forest, two lab mice run from a crow and find safety by a tree, where they discover a lifeless man nearby. Later that day, as the police take Lila to the station, she faces questions from photojournalists who ask if she's sorry for her actions. She answers this in the interrogation room, informing the three cops that she's not. Meanwhile, Puff testifies in Congress, expressing regret only for his expulsion, Lila's imprisonment, and Nathan's demise. In the afterlife, Nathan, who has a gunshot wound on his forehead, finds himself in a white room confessing that the word sorry is meaningless to him. In the interrogation room, Lila narrates that everything began when she was 12. After class, she headed straight home. She faced the mirror and unbuttoned her top, only to see thick hair forming in her chest area. Feeling embarrassed, she cried and her mom took her to a doctor, who mentioned that her hormones caused her condition. By the time Lila was 20, she looked like an ape, which resulted in her being cast as King Kong in a school play. One night after shaving the hair from her body, she soaked herself in the tub and tried to end her life. However, she changed her mind when she saw a mouse looking at her with no judgment. As Lila wraps up her story, she notices the yawning officers. She asks if they understand what she's saying, but only one of them answers, recalling that she mentioned a mouse. Meanwhile, in Congress, Puff shares his story that he was raised in the wilderness by his father who suffered from a delusion, believing himself to be an ape. He explains that his dad spent years in a mental hospital after attempting to take up residence in the ape house at the local zoo. Following his release, the man underwent therapy and tried to conform to society's rules. He had a job, got married, and soon became the father of Puff. However, when he learned about Kennedy's assassination, he was devastated by the waywardness of humans, causing his relapse. The man started acting like an ape again, and he stole little Puff from his wife and raised him with tenderness and respect in the forest. Growing up, Puff became like his dad and regarded himself as an ape, specifically a pygmy chimp. Meanwhile, Nathan explains he hated apes when he was still alive, thinking his parents had influenced him to develop such extreme dislike. Visiting a zoo when he was young, he was excited upon seeing a monkey. However, his strict mother corrected him, stating that chimpanzees were apes, not monkeys. His father then pointed out that while apes look like humans, they're not civilized. Nathan's mother then interjected, advising her son not to act on his instincts like a chimp did. Meanwhile, Lila grew to love animals and their non-judgmental nature. For a while, she became a nature writer so she could stay in the forest. Soon, she became famous and every woman bought her book. However, when she turned 30, she longed for pleasure and thought of removing all her hair to meet a man. She decided to leave the forest and return to civilization. Lila booked an electrolysis session and met Louise, who set her up on a date. The writer then met Nathan, a psychologist who was working on a sociological experiment of teaching table manners to mice and eventually to humans to make the world a safer place. From time to time, Nathan saw psychiatrist Wendell, who thought that his passion for table manners stemmed from when he was punished as a kid for using the wrong fork. However, the psychologist denied the connection. One day in the laboratory, the psychologist worked on his experiment alongside his French assistant, Gabrielle. They prepared salad for a pair of mice to eat and placed 3 forks beside the plates. When the first mouse used the right fork, Nathan smiled. However, he shocked the other when he selected the wrong one. Following a day's work, Nathan had a dinner date with Lila. However, he became critical of her table manners. He corrected her when she used the wrong fork and reminded her not to speak when her mouth was full. When Nathan apologized for his behavior, Lila didn't mind as she also had her quirks, though she kept them to herself. This moment led to their first kiss and a romantic night. During an electrolysis appointment the next morning, Lila worried about Nathan finding out about her condition, but Louise comforted her, stating that it wasn't a big deal. In the afterlife, Nathan describes his experience of love, recalling it was a messy mix of need, desperation, and insecurity. Suddenly, he admits that he doesn't want to pass away yet. He tries to leave, but when he opens the door, it leads to the same room. Realizing he has no way out, he sits down and continues his story. Soon, Lila moved in with him. During a family dinner, Nathan discovered that his parents had adopted Wayne. He quickly became critical of his table manners, particularly his elbow on the table. However, Nathan felt surprised surprised when his parents didn't punish his adoptive brother. In response, his mother defended that Wayne was self-disciplined for his age. Feeling uncomfortable, Nathan tried to change the topic, informing his mom that Lila was a nature writer. However, the woman made a sarcastic remark, saying that she loved nature but only wanted it to stay at the zoo. Following dinner, Nathan expressed how annoyed he was at Wayne. He also apologized to Lila because of her mother's negative reaction to her work. However, Lila, who was shaving at the time, didn't believe that he was sorry because he laughed along with his mom. When he explained that he loved nature like her, his girlfriend invited him to celebrate their love for it by hiking in the woods. Following this, they shared a kiss, but Nathan suddenly stopped when he tasted shaving cream. In Congress, Puff continues his story, sharing that he saw Lila and Nathan in the forest thinking that they were also apes. At that time, he could not speak human language and moved like a chimp. When Lila sensed his presence, she then removed her clothing and attempted to interact with him, leaving her boyfriend behind. However, he only bolted and climbed the tree to run away from her, but the writer soon cornered him on a tree branch. The woman then tried to talk to him in human language, but he couldn't understand what she said and just self-pleased, causing him to fall off the tree. Lila quickly attended to him, and Nathan followed. Upon seeing the ape-behaving man, he became interested in making him a subject for his experiment. Lila objected, thinking that the man was already happy because he was away from civilization. However, the psychologist wanted to improve the man. The ape-behaving man was then kept in a glass cage inside the lab for monitoring. When he awakened, he became confused when he was in diapers and had wires connected to him. When he became aggressive, Nathan tasked Gabrielle to shock him. On the third shock, the man calmed down. The psychologist then named his subject Puff after his French assistant's dog. Nathan introduced himself and Gabrielle to the simian man, stating that they were his mommy and daddy. This immediately delighted the assistant, who had a crush on him. After work, the assistant tried to ask the psychologist out for coffee, but despite his rejection, she continued to flirt with him. That night, Nathan got a call from Gabrielle. At that time, Lila, who was shaving in the bathroom, repeatedly asked who he was talking to. Annoyed, he opened the bathroom door, only to discover what she was doing. Lila tried to explain herself to her partner, stating that hormones caused her body hair and that she was undergoing electrolysis to get rid of it. In her bedroom, Gabrielle, who was in provocative clothing, listened to the argument of the psychologist and his girlfriend. After Nathan stormed out of the house, Lila noticed that the phone was on the bed. She tried to speak to the other person on the line. However, Gabrielle hung up and drove to the lab, knowing that Nathan would be there. Meanwhile, the psychologist looked for a book in the lab to learn more about Lila's condition, only to discover her photo on the page. Suddenly, Gabrielle appeared, lying that she needed to check some papers. Then, she dimmed the lights and sang a lullaby, putting Puff to sleep. She then allured Nathan by showing her provocative nightgown, leading them to spend a romantic moment. Meanwhile, Lila continued shaving all of her hair. In Congress, Puff explains how he witnessed Nathan and Gabrielle's passionate act and wanted the same for himself, so he started to comply with the psychologist. During an experiment, he chose the correct fork and stood up when Nathan asked him what he would do if the lady he were with excused herself to powder her nose. The psychologist praised his progress and made out with Gabrielle to celebrate. Meanwhile, Lila, unaware of her boyfriend's secret relationship, bought a wig to cover her shaved head. In the afterlife, Nathan admits that he felt guilty about what he had done to Lila. Though he loved her, he was disgusted with her condition and couldn't help but be attracted to Gabrielle's femininity and French accent. One night during dinner, Lila confronted him for being so distant, asking him if he was seeing someone else. However, Nathan lied, reasoning that he was just preoccupied. Lila assured him that her body hair would be gone with 2 more years of electrolysis. She also shared that she was making efforts to be more feminine by enrolling in a ballet class and painting her nails pink. When she suggested they have a baby, Nathan started having nightmares of having an ape with his girlfriend. He opened this up to Wendell, who pointed out that it stemmed from his issues with Lila's condition. Nathan denied it, sharing that he was more concerned with parental responsibility. However, the psychiatrist saw right through him and suggested evaluating his feelings for his girlfriend. The man knew he loved Lila, but he also wanted Gabrielle. One day at work, after Nathan taught Puff how to read, the assistant revealed her frustration and wanted the psychologist to choose between her and Lila. When Gabrielle mentioned that she wanted to have a baby with him, he imagined imagine them having a human child. However, he admitted that he didn't know how to leave Lila. This angered the assistant, causing her to quit her job. That night, Nathan shared what happened to Lila, who volunteered to be his assistant's replacement despite being against his mission to teach Puff civilization. The next day, the psychologist taught Puff how to behave properly in social events. After the music stopped playing, the subject stood up, applauded, and threw a rose, prompting Nathan to praise him. That night, the couple enjoyed a romantic evening together. In the following days, they continued to work on the experiment. Puff then learned to drink wine, speak properly, trim his nose hairs, ride the unicycle while juggling, and even perform. Recognizing the subject's readiness to mingle with society, Nathan released him, but didn't remove his shock collar just in case he misbehaved. After stepping out of his cage, Puff hugged the psychologist. However, while embracing Lila, he couldn't control his urges, prompting Nathan to shock him. Because of this, the man recognized that what he did was wrong and immediately apologized to Lila. After this, the couple took Puff to the city and they had a meal in a lavish restaurant. Meeting the waitress, the man still couldn't control his carnal desires, prompting the psychologist to shock him again. In the car, Puff apologized to the couple, promising that his behavior earlier wouldn't happen again. Lila comforted him, encouraging him not to be ashamed of his animalistic urges. However, when Nathan reacted with disagreement, she took it back and advised the subject to learn how to control his desires. To help Puff resist his urges, Nathan gave him an exercise by showing him provocative images. When the subject couldn't control himself, the psychologist shocked him many times until he finally resisted his desires. Witnessing the continuous punishments, Lila felt bad for the subject. The following day, the couple took Puff to the restaurant to check if he could control himself. When a waitress approached, he felt an urge, but he managed to stay in his seat. Afterward, Nathan praised him for his great behavior and rewarded him with a good room, money, and freedom. He then entrusted him to make good decisions independently. In response, the subject promised not to let him down. That night, Puff read a book and tried acting like a fine man. Meanwhile, Nathan felt uneasy and told Lila that he needed to go to the lab to check on the subject. However, it turned out that he wanted to see Gabrielle. At that time, his former assistant was speaking with someone on the phone with her American accent, revealing that she wasn't really French. Hearing Nathan on the door, she switched into a French accent. Before letting him in, she fixed her apartment and dressed provocatively. The psychologist then saw her waiting for him in bed. He then admitted to her that he was ready to leave Lila and be with her instead. However, the scheming woman told him that she already moved on. Meanwhile, Puff used his money and went to an exotic club to drink and interact with a courtesan. Returning home late, Nathan told Lila that he spent hours with Puff due to a philosophical discussion. However, the woman knew he was lying because he just picked up the man from a flophouse after he ran out of money. Nathan admitted the truth that he spent a romantic night with someone he'd fallen in love with. Hearing this, Lila became furious, pointing out that she gave up her soul, beliefs, and body hair just to be with him. She then took all of her stuff and stormed out of the house. Following his breakup, Nathan presented Puff to other scientists. The subject then spoke about how the psychologist improved him. Meanwhile, Lila, whose hair grew back, fell into a depressive state and didn't want to leave the hotel room. When Louise visited her, the crying woman explained that she didn't want to pretend anymore. The electrologist offered her comfort and invited her to stay in her apartment for a while. The audience applauded Puff after his speech. Following this, Gabrielle entered the room and congratulated Nathan with a kiss. After that, she kissed Puff on the cheek and touched him flirtatiously. On the following nights, Puff left the hotel room whenever he heard the couple's romantic noises to find someone to engage with in a physical moment. However, during a dancing presentation, Gabrielle continued to flirt with him. Soon, Puff graduated, and everyone applauded his achievement. In his speech, he expressed his gratitude to Nathan, who taught him to behave like a man. Meanwhile, Lila finally finished her electrolysis with Louise. One day, Nathan and Gabrielle celebrated because of Puff's fame and consistent bookings. Suddenly, they were interrupted by Frank, who suddenly threatened them with a gun. Shortly after, Lila arrived, showing off her flawless body. Afterward, Louise appeared, who turned out to be Frank's girlfriend. Lila then took out the rope from her bag but became distracted upon seeing the well-mannered mice inside the cage. After Louise tied the couple, Lila took the small rodents and Puff to the forest, where they really belonged. When she released the mice, the man tried to escape, only for her to shock him. Lila then asked him to remove his clothing, revealing that she would be retraining him to become an ape man again so they could live happily in nature. When Puff objected because he loved being human, she only shocked him. In Congress, Puff shares his retraining experience, describing Lila's fairness as his teacher. However, one day, he couldn't help his urges and eventually spent a romantic time with her. Meanwhile, Nathan couldn't stop thinking about his former girlfriend and her flawless body. Soon, Gabrielle noticed him being distant, prompting her to complain about it during a family dinner. While Lila and Puff lived happily in the forest, Nathan constantly searched for them. One day, he finally found the couple. He threatened Puff with his gun, but he dropped it when he saw Lila's body. Witnessing this, the ape-behaving man took the weapon and fatally shot Nathan in the forehead. Lila took the blame and urged Puff to remain in the woods. However, she requested that he testify in Congress first about humanity's flaws. In the afterlife, Nathan confessed to an invisible being that he knew who shot him. After Puff appears on TV, Lila watches from prison, happy he fulfilled his promise. Afterward, the simian man removes his clothes and heads to the woods for freedom, with reporters following him. Before entering the forest, he encounters his biological mother who's been searching for him for 30 years. Politely, he greets her, but explains that he must return to where he belongs. However, shortly after the reporters are gone, Puff gets into a car with Gabrielle, revealing that they're lovers. As they find a place to eat, he gazes back at the forest with a worried expression. On the roadside, Nathan's well-mannered lab mice try to hitch a ride back to the city, holding a sign that reads New York.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.